so much happening in the automotive space these days, and the context for that goes far beyond just the OEMs. We are, of course, talking about the ancillary industries, and this is also very, very specific to the big changes that are coming. There are not just new regulations and policies, but even from a product perspective, we're talking about alternate fuel vehicles, perhaps even getting into the autonomous segment as well very quickly. What are the implications or the growth areas that come from that? Well, that and more is what I hope to discuss with Mr. Jürgen Ziegler, who is the regional CEO for Schaeffler and is in India right now, and I'm privileged to have him join me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
No, thanks for the time, and I'm going to jump straight into it then. You heard the context of what I said at the start. It is an interesting yet challenging and sometimes almost a confusing time that we find ourselves in, because some of that future seems very unknown today. It does throw up a lot of opportunities though for companies like yours.
It does. Not only from the perspective that of course we are today a major supplier to the automotive industry, mainly of course to the internal combustion engines, transmission, axle. But as well, we are providing substantial part of our business model is on the industrial section. Yes. Worldwide for Schaeffler, the automotive share is around 75% of our business, 25% is industrial. But it gives us the opportunity to look from various angles to this kind of movement, and I think we are in some way, of course, getting equipped like others. Prepared would be better to say, like others, for the challenges to come.
When you say that 75% of the business is automotive, in India you then have a lot of room to grow, because I know in India it's about 50-50 for you, isn't it?
Yeah. In India we are more or less 50-50, and of course India is a very interesting market for us. I mean, India selling 4 million vehicles a year, which is the 4th or 5th biggest market in the world. So I think you're right, there are opportunities even in today's business model, not even only talking about the future ones.
In the Indian context, one change of course has been the volumes that have grown. Maybe you can argue that some of those haven't grown at the rate that we would have expected a few years ago, but yet there are already these projections about third largest market in a few years' time. So that's one part of the story, of course, which is important. But the other thing we've seen is that, especially in the kind of segments that you operate in, or the kind of the work that you need to do. Earlier, it used to be more about sort of print and reproduce. Now there is a lot more that's happening from a development perspective.
Right.
A lot of that R&D is happening in India. Does that also become especially interesting, because many other markets are sort of saturated on that front?
Very valid point. It's important for us, and like we have today already in India, a big group of engineers on R&D, on basic R&D and application engineers. That is a growing part of our business. As we know, we have to be close to our customers from the R&D point of view, to the customers, to the decision makers, to the producers, to understand what's their shift into the future. So for us, being in R&D is an essential part of our business. We couldn't do without. And as you rightly mentioned, I mean, in some of our businesses we are more moving to a commodity business. R&D doesn't play that big role, but there's quite a substantial amount of our business based on engineering skills, and that has always been a part of our model and will always be.
Given that, and given the fact that, and I know you've also announced that there will be substantial investments in the business, about 250 to 300 crore per year for the next couple of years. Where is the bulk of that money going to go for you?
Yeah, so we are going to expand into plant capacities on our today's business, and of course getting prepared for our future business. We are going to invest into our distribution network, and we are going to invest into all the logistic areas which will provide us substantial benefits on the cost side.
Now, on the logistics side, you've also had huge investments recently announced in Germany as well.
Right.
Let's say, what's the intent behind that? When you talk about putting some significant amount of money there, where do you aim to get to with those investments?
Yeah. Well, if you look into the kind of distribution, the kind of logistics we do today in India, taking care about that we are reaching each and every part of the region, but not in the most efficient way. So we will have to build hubs, warehouses, distribution centers, to save on freight costs, to save on handling costs, to do things like you just mentioned, where you do some completion of spare parts into full service packages, and then distribute from a more central hub into the country. That will be part of our future logistic.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there is such a substantial business in the industrial space for you. Yeah. I'm trying not to keep my auto hat firmly on, but having said that, when you talk about today's business and the fact that you're even saying it like that, today's business and future business, you do anticipate a huge shift in the future, isn't it?
Well, everybody talks at this point of time all over the world about how is the future of the internal combustion engine, what will be the electric vehicle, what role hybridization will play. So if I say future business, I'm thinking rightly already about steps towards another way of engines and transmissions. And that is, of course, something which we are getting prepared as well.
So speaking of that, sort of change that's coming, let's start with electric. Now, yes, the Indian government has also thrown in context to it by putting a target date, 2030. Many people think it's unrealistic, but just the fact that you now have a goal to work towards, and it's not just India, you're seeing many governments coming up with those kind of targets. Does that help sort of contextualize it and make it more real for you? Because not just in terms of targeting business, but also in terms of where to put your investments.
I think it definitely helps to have a target for what will be the share of, let me say, an electric vehicle in future. On the other hand, we need to be probably a bit more careful what kind of steps in between are necessary to reach there. And I mean, at the end, it's not that you have a certain share of electric vehicles. The benefit should be in the pollution part of it and reduction of CO2, etc. So I would say, yes, it helps. It drives the company thinking into a future technology. On the other hand, it should provide as well a platform of giving the car and the supply industry opportunities, other technical solutions in between, which may serve the purpose in a similar way, and would make this transition from let's call it 100% internal combustion into electric vehicle drive more smooth.
Now, the OEMs get asked this question very often, and it's more from a controversial point of view than anything else, that while you may be going 100% electric, what's the source of that power? Is that green as well? And like I said, that's more to ratchet things up. But in your context, that end of it could also be a business opportunity, isn't it? Or is a business opportunity?
It is already. I mean, this discussion from well to wheel is of course on our table. And as I said before, as we are not providing only for automotive industry, we are very much in the industrial segment. And starting with power generation, whether it's on wind or any other kind of solar energy, we are providing parts for this. So we are starting on the well, literally, and moving in the transition of the parts, automotive, industrial automation factories, moving that into then the final product. So we are benefiting as well from, let me say, different sources how to generate energy within Schaeffler.
But is that purely a sort of a commercial business-to-business conversation, or does government also get involved in that according to the kind of... Because why I'm asking this question is that a lot of the power generation is in the hands of the government. So does it naturally mean that some of this conversation also gives you not just the role of a supplier but also a co-creator in that sense?
I think the later part. I think we are very much involved as well in what kind of technology is used. I think the government needs to provide the framework for the industry, and the industry has to be innovative enough.
Now, you've also mentioned, I know, from a global perspective, that it is sort of mobility that becomes the driver for your business, and you have different pillars that sort of the strategy will stand on. But when it comes to that context of mobility, do you also see yourself, because you may have, let's say, as a one-off done some sort of a mobility solution, individual mobility, a vehicle of sorts. Do you see yourself starting to play that role going forward as well? Because that's the other big change that's coming, where traditional OEMs may not be the only OEMs in the future. Do you see yourself scaling up to that, or is it something that you would not consider?
No, I would say for us, our definition of mobility has, as you said, four pillars. And of course, we are considering the urban, inter-urban mobility in the same way like the electric drive. So for us, extending the business model is very much a thinking which gets on our strategic map, because it's clear today already that we are moving from a single component supplier to entire systems. And while doing that, you are getting further into the value chain of the entire business. So I think that will be, and it will be an essential part of our business in the future.
And eventually, do you think India would be a part of that as well? Because I can understand why initially it may not be, because there's already so much, traditional business growth that's still left to be had in India. But eventually, do you think India would also be important for you from that perspective?
Very much. I think, particularly in a country where you have, let me say, a good base for mobility solutions, and you have a good base for what the infrastructure is going to provide, and what kind of business you see on the agricultural side, and what are you going to do on the transportation, on the railway. The opportunities, looking from a group's point of view, into India are huge from our perspective. And that's not only because India is growing at a pace of 5, 6, 7% GDP. No, India is starting in some way from a quite lower base, and that, of course, is for us a very interesting market.
Now, let me talk a little bit about the Indian business itself. You've recently had a consolidation here, and you brought everything under one umbrella, so to speak. The advantages you see of doing that, and also how happy you are with today's position of the business in numbers terms, and what sort of targets you're setting for the team for next year.
Okay.
Lots of questions on that, I know, so we can take it one by one.
I try. Number one, yes, we merged the three companies, formerly FAG, Luke and Ina, to one Schaeffler India. And to your second question, we are very happy with the progress which is made already, even prior to the formal shareholder vote, which is likely to happen beginning of next year. We get already quite very positive feedback that now we are not entering, let me say, the market and the customers as three different companies, but we are providing one face to the customer. And while doing so, it's not just the face. Of course, we can bundle our products. We can bundle products and services. We can already, by putting these three companies together, have a much wider, broader product offering. And that carries on to other areas. When you talk, like we said a couple of minutes ago, when we talk about distribution, we have three distribution networks. Now we are going to have one consolidated one, different logistics. Even on the plant side, I mean, we have 4 plants in India. We will see what are we going to do with our products, which is the most adequate plant. So from all this, I'm trying to explain that there is a lot of reason, a lot of sense of moving it as one Schaeffler as the corporate brand, and still maintaining Luke, Ina and FAG as product brands.
And increasing efficiencies, like you said, would then obviously impact profitability in a much more positive way.
For sure. I mean, on the logistics side, but as well on the organizational side. You put 3 organizations together. Also, the companies somehow tried to live that already as one organization in the past, but still, 3 legal entities, 3 organizations. you will have cost efficiencies in the entire administration part, so that will straightway hit the cost and the bottom line of the company.
So I know that you've spent now just a few hours here in India on this trip, and you're sort of getting grips to it, the entire marketplace, which is huge, as you've just told me, the region that you cover. But specifically then, targets for Team India from your side would be?
Well,
in the short term.
I would say in the short term, and if I call short term, I would say in the next 3 to 5 years. I expect that we are able even to double our revenue from today's point of view. I think that's feasible in the 5 years target. Number two, I believe that we can substantially generate synergies out of the merged companies. From my perspective, that could be in the range of, let's say, 470 crores, 4,700 million, if I'm not mistaken, on the revenue side, and maybe on the cost side up to 500 million in a 3 to 5 years period. So I think that's the amount of synergies what we can see today. And as you said, I just spent a couple of hours in India. I'm very much pleased with the progress what the team's already made, and I'm sure that maybe when we meet next time we can even be even more concrete on numbers and figures. There is enough potential in the market and for us as well as one Schaeffler.
And I know you've also come at a time where the environment hasn't been the most conducive. You've seen the smog that Delhi is enveloped with, but it kind of sets the context more so, isn't it, for the need for everybody to sort of step up to this big solution that everybody's been talking about. Do you think it would be an accelerated move towards that solution here in India, which obviously would benefit businesses like yours, but not from that view, but so much more from the view of society?
I think very much, yeah. I think so. And it's not only environment, it's a lot of around. I believe even a situation like we have today or yesterday in Delhi with quite a pollution will provide opportunities in other areas. Now, I mean, talking about the smog, knowing that something is coming from the agricultural side, we are providing sufficient solutions for agricultural business. So the technology part of what we could move in this kind of even established industries, I think, is huge and will of course help the society in many ways.
So, Mr. Ziegler, I'll end with the point I guess I started with, which was just a mention of how you are going to have substantial investments going into the business here in India over the next couple of years for sure. It's a sizable amount that you've already committed, getting close to about 600 crore rupees. Do you anticipate having to even revise that target? And are you open to investing more if you do see the need for it?
We are, definitely. The target what we set for the moment is based on the so far existing strategic plan for India. Now, with the merged company, we are definitely going to relook into all the areas, and if needed, we are going to revise that. India for Schaeffler is one of the big potential markets, and we are here for 55 years, and we are going to stay there for the next 55 years on whatever level of investment is needed to make profitable business.
That's a very positive note to end on. I appreciate your time today, and I do hope the next time you're here the air is a lot cleaner too.
Thank you very much.
But look forward to the next meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you.